Good morning. This is Speaking of Sports on NBC Sports Radio and NBCSportsRadio.com. Good morning. Going to be a fun day in the NFL. We're wrapping up Week 17, and that's the end of the regular season. We're going to get to the business of sports with the professor coming up in just a second. First, let's do an upgrade. The Home Depot can help you with big savings on brand name appliances. Right now, they've got their lowest prices of the year on select appliances. Got to check out their selection of the top brands that you love: Samsung, Maytag, LG, Frigidaire, and Whirlpool. And let the Home Depot take care of the rest. Visit homedepot.com/appliances for more details. Home Depot, more saving, more doing. All right, let's get to the business of sports, the dollars, the deal making, and for that, we've got Rick Horrow, the professor, who joins us every week and talk about the business of sports. Happy New Year, my friend.
Happy New Year, my friend, too. It is ironic that the afterthought bowls, which are the bowls that follow the bowl of six, I guess the bowls of six yesterday, were probably some of the best games of the entire bowl season. If you stay up, I did because I'm old and it's on the East Coast, but that Motel 6 Cactus Bowl, you wouldn't know it was a 7-5 against a 6-6 team. That's the beauty of having all those teams in those bowl games.
Well, and you either didn't watch the game or you did like I did, and you bailed at halftime on the Oregon TCU game. And yeah, you're right. I mean, that was on its way to being another lopsided victory, but instead you see a little bit of college football history. Let's talk about that. We'll start there, Rick. The college football playoff debuted in 2015 with the 4 teams, and now we see all these blowouts all over the board yesterday. Kind of looks like if we'd expanded that to 8, we'd have had some pretty good football games, right?
Yeah, but you can't make that decision based on any one particular year, certainly one particular week. What you can do is evaluate how the New Year's Eve reduction in ratings, which was pretty significant, is going to affect next year. They've got them next year at New Year's Eve as well. But so the combination of the blowouts and the ratings drop will bother people, yet the $470 million for the 3 playoff games, ESPN certainly on the hot seat to try to get their return on investment. It was over tripled from the investment in the BCS. The last BCS rights deal was $180 million. This is $470. And so the bottom line is the payouts are great, nearly $500 million for the bowl organizing committees. Fans treated to some exciting football, some not. But obviously, it's hard to believe that 40 of the 41 are done.
Fans didn't like the games being on New Year's Eve. That was reflected in a 36% dip in the ratings. You know what? You can't have that from a client perspective from any other. Do you imagine that they get those games off of New Year's Eve next year?
Well, they're scheduled for New Year's Eve, so it'll be an interesting dynamic in the boardrooms over the next couple of months because these schedules are set a year in advance. So, and every other bowl schedule ripples around it, so it'll be hard to take it off next year, but they'll think about it longer term, and there has to be some extra promotion or some kind of supplement. The whole lead into New Year's Rocky Eve didn't really work, maybe because that program has lost its luster, and if you're going to be watching a blowout, then you get a turn pretty early, and it might have had something to do with the blowout games after the first half, but you never know.
Might have had something to do with people have other stuff to do other than watch college football on New Year's Eve. Might be just that simple. Right. Biggest thing of the year, the headline of the year, honestly, it's got to be American Pharaoh. The impact on what this has done. Can you talk about, how many extra dollars this generated by us finally having a Triple Crown winner?
Yeah, well, it's not just the dollars, although it's significant, clearly. But it's the fact that every once in a while you need a defining moment to either resurrect the sport or make sure it doesn't irrevocably stop generating the dollars. So 37 years between Triple Crowns. Now we have a winner, and so it puts horse racing back on the map. Let's see how you follow up with it. And frankly, it's a kind of a letdown now because what do you do for me lately? But now they've got to build on what they've got. But here's the bottom line: $8.6 million off the courses just because of his racing winnings. And what about after retirement? It's great work if you can get it. They call it a sit-in. He gets $200,000, Arizona on that diet. Gets $200,000 a sitting per live poll.
Wow.
Sitting. $40 million this year is expected from a very prolific horse. And I will just leave it at that by saying it's good work if you can get it.
Boy, no kidding, especially the $40 million that goes on top of that, and that's where I'll leave that little punchline. Hey, look, we're talking about the NFL, and we're going overseas again. Looks like more games in jolly old England, but maybe someplace besides England, right?
Yeah, well, 3 venues, 5 games, every year, potentially at the end of this 10-year run. So England's being taken care of pretty well. The awareness is up, obviously. But with the NFL's awareness campaign in other places, Germany's going to have an activation plan. Watch for that. Brazil, maybe the Pro Bowl. Mexico may have a few games, bring games back to Canada. So it's across the pond, but it's also international. And the NFL understands how valuable it is to generate revenue beyond our shores. Roger Goodell puts a target up of $25 billion. He holds his people to it. And frankly, with money overseas, he may get there.
Let's talk about the NBA. Rick Horrow is our guest. The professor joins us to talk about the business, the deal-making, the dollars that go on in sports. The Warriors, it's a red-hot product. I mean, honestly, the season that they had last year, their accomplishments, they win the Larry O'Brien Trophy. They have the MVP. Now they start the season this year, the 24-game win streak. They're a team that's looking for a new venue. Boy, they're doing it right, aren't they?
Yeah, well, they win 67 regular season games last year, and they look like they're on pace to win every game from now to the end of the season. This year, Steph Curry with a new deal with the water company and obviously other deals around the NBA. Joe Lacob needed this. This is the best time for the Warriors. The guy that runs it, the CEO, looks for a new deal in downtown San Francisco on the waterfront with the arena. Not finalized yet, but it's well on its way. Politicians love winners, and this is a classic case.
You know, in the Horror Sports Brief, you're talking a lot about the Chicago Cubs here. And you know what? They had a great year. It was a breakout year. Chris Bryant, Rookie of the Year. Then they have the Cy Young Award winner. Then they have the Manager of the Year. They've just renovated the stadium. Is this the year for the Cubs?
Well, if it is, and we know it, then I'm going to pick real estate, and I'm going to pick stocks. And if that's the prediction to do, I've been 0 for 107, I guess it is. But they get Jason Hayward away, et cetera, et cetera. The bottom line is the value continues to increase. They've got these young kids tied up with arbitration years before they become free agents. And the OF team's done it right. But just when you expect it is the time when you don't get it. So I'm not going to say anything as a Cub fan. We'll just leave it alone.
All right, so only got a few seconds here, so we're going to talk about the national championship game here. Not necessarily the business of that, because we know that's the golden prize. That's where you want to be, is in that big national championship game coming up on the 11th. Let's just talk about the football game for a second. Who do you like? Do you like Clemson to continue to beat the odds, or does that Alabama Crimson Tide look just too tough?
Alabama knocks the heck out of them, and if Watson can stay healthy and run a little bit, maybe they've got a shot. So I am firmly uncommitted. I'll be there. We'll talk next Sunday, and maybe I'll make a decision.
Awesome stuff. Rick Horrow, the business of sports, with us every Sunday morning here on Speaking of Sports. Thanks, my friend, and again, Happy New Year.
All right, man. Talk to you next week.
Talk to you soon. Very good stuff. Coming up next, this is a book that you want, honestly. Like I say in the interview, 180 little tiny 5x7 pages, and it's Ryan Holiday, and it's next on NBC.